Hey, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. Thanks for joining me today. I have a Christmas card that I'm working on using the Decorate a Tree die set from Whimsy Stamps. I have already done my die cutting and I am going to just jump right into how I'm adding texture and color to my die cut. So for the 4 tree pieces, I die cut them in green cardstock, and I'm just using my Rustic Wilderness Distress ink to add a little bit of shadow to my tree pieces. So the ends of the needles kind of flaring out are lighter than the top point of the tree. So like each layer of tree is creating a shadow on the layer below. So that way it just gives the tree a little bit more dimension. Now there is that one piece that is really tall and it looks like it has 2 different layers in one. So I added a little bit of shadow in the middle there just to create more dimension and more layers on the tree. I've laid everything out just to make sure I'm happy with it. And I am, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to be using some Slimline paper from one of the Whimsy paper packs. So I'm going to add some splatter to my tree instead of the background. I'm just using a piece of acetate with my distress ink and some water and a scraggly paintbrush and flicking on that ink onto my tree. And once I'm happy with how it looks, I'm going to go ahead and set that aside to dry and clean up my workstation because without fail, I get ink everywhere. So now I'm going to pull out my tree trunk and this little red pot that my tree is going to be sitting in, and I want to add some dimension to these pieces as well. So I'm getting out my alcohol markers. I'm going to be using EB1 to add some shadows to the edges of my tree trunk, and I'm going to use my colorless blender just to push that out a little bit. It's going to look a little funky while that colorless blender dries back, but it looks nice at the end. After that, I'm going to grab some shades of my DRs, the dark reds. I'm going to start with DR1, which is red, and I'm going to add some shadow onto the sides and the kind of the lip of the pot, just giving it some shadow and dimension, just like I am with the rest of the pieces. As I go through, the color really does kind of dry back a lot, so I will get out DR2, which is Poppy, just to add in a little bit more of a shadow. You can see right here, it's already really light and it's going to be hard to see. So bringing in that darker color and going over the same spots, just darkening up those shadows a little bit. I just want my pot to seem more round. So now that those are done, I'm going to pull out the rest of my die cut pieces so you can see everything cut out. There are bows, ornaments, candles, some stars to the top of the tree, as well as some garland pieces. I've cut the candles and my star out of some white cardstock. I did one set of ornaments in red and another in a sparkly rose gold glitter paper. I did my bows in white and I did the garland in that rose gold glitter paper as well. So for my star, I'm using my GYs. I'm using 3, which is gold, and 2, which is mimosa. So I'm starting with gold along the edge and then coloring in the whole thing with mimosa, and I'm just coloring in the larger of the 2 stars. I'm going to use the same 2 colors to color in the flames of my candles. I misplaced one. I think I find it later in my little skull container, but I have all of the candles colored, but I'm only going to use, I believe, 6 total. And same with my ornaments. I'm adding some shadow just like I did with my tree pot, using the 2 different shades of red just to make them look more round. And I've cut off just the top of the rose gold ornament, and I'm using it to be the top of my ornament. So where it would normally be metal on more of a vintage looking ornament. And I'm just going to use my jewel picker and some wet glue to glue that rose gold on top of the red. And I'm going to repeat that for about 6 of the ornaments. I did 3 of the more elongated teardrop diamond shape and 3 of the circular round ones. I also decided to cut out the bottoms of my candles in that rose gold paper as well, so trimming those down and gluing to the bottom of my candle. Here you can see my white candle now with the yellow flame and rose gold bottom. And I did 6 of those, and then I'm gonna start putting everything together now that I've prepped all my pieces, all my die cut pieces. So now let's start building our tree because everything is super dry by now. I'm going to attach each layer with a couple foam circles. I want there to be dimension, so the whole tree will lay flat on my card base, but between each layer there is a little bit of dimension, so it looks like the bottom of the tree needles are kind of, I'm using my hands to talk even though I'm voice recording so you can't see. But imagine, the flick of the tree, it has more dimension than what's underneath it. So I'm just using some foam circles to layer them on for now. And I did not check to see if this was going to fit on a slimline card. Luckily, it works out okay in the end, but I would definitely recommend making sure your tree is going to fit before you start gluing it together. I'm going to attach my star to the top of the tree, so just adding some wet glue to the bottom part that will cover the very top. And then I'm going to add another foam circle to my tree trunk, again trying to create a little bit of dimension between each of the layers of the tree. And then I'm going to make sure my tree is as straight as possible. And then I'm going to glue the trunk inside of my little pot here. So I'm adding some glue to the front and back because this die cut of the red pot has a slit already die cut in, so you can put the tree trunk inside and you don't have to worry about using a craft knife or anything on your own. It's already die cut. Okay, so now my tree is pretty much all together. We're going to start decorating. I decided to use the more scalloped looking garland rather than the ones with the little beads or circles. So I'm just using some wet glue, and eventually I will grab my tweezers to help me glue all of these on. So just starting with the largest layer and then moving all the way to the top, gluing each of those garland pieces down. After that, I'm going to lay out my candles and my ornaments in just some various spots around my tree. I'm using my jewel picker just to help me pick up those pieces and place them down. And once I'm happy with how everything is placed, I'm going to use my jewel picker and wet glue again to glue all of these pieces down. After that, we can start working on assembling the card base. Here I grabbed that slimline paper and I was like, ooh, I didn't think about if this tree would even fit on a slimline card. And it just barely fits, but it's still a little tall. So I'm just peeling off my tree trunk because it just has that one piece or that one foam circle and then moving it down. So you don't really see much of the tree trunk, but that's okay. So there it will fit on my slimline card much nicer now. I have a base cut out of some white cardstock. It is 8.5 by 7 and I scored at 3.5, so it's 8.5 by 3.5. And then I am gluing on this background paper from the Slimline SurReally Cool Christmas paper pack. And I also die cut this white frame from the Slimline Birthday Scallops die set. It's the largest frame in the set. And I'm going to adhere this down to my card base with some foam strips. These are the 1/8 foam strips from scrapbook.com. And as you can see, I'm having a lot of trouble getting it to stick in the right spot. So once I finally get it on, there you can see the tree looks really pretty framed inside that scallop with that beautiful blue background. This is probably my favorite paper from the paper pack. I used some of that 1/8 foam strips on the back of my tree, peeled off that release paper, and then glued that right down to the center of the card. I'm using some wet glue to make sure my tree and my red pot stay in place when they touch the frame. I'm making sure that my tree is flat to the card base, but is still popping up where I had all those foam circles. Here is a final look at my slimline card. I absolutely love how it turned out. It's so fun to use dies and not do any stamping. I'd love to know in the comments if you enjoy making cards using only die cuts. You can find links to everything I used to create this card down in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like and subscribe if you're new and come back. Thanks and have a wonderful day.